2020 is now officially over, and we can now fully focus on a pivotal offseason for the Dallas Cowboys. After all that we saw last year, a lot of questions still linger, most notably the contract of Dak Prescott and what changes have to be made to the roster. But with all that has to be seen, it still needs to be ironed out. It hasn't stopped draft talk, namely mock drafts, to slow up one bit. And it wouldn't be the offseason if Cowboy fans weren't arguing as to what to do with the first pick in the draft. At this point, there's no getting around it. It's a clear and obvious debate as to what to do with the pick. Should they go offense, let's say Kyle Pitts, or defense, Caleb Farley or Patrick Surtain? Or what's the best route for the Cowboys going into next year and beyond? Personally, where I'm at, if all three players are there at 10 and are all graded the same, I'm taking Caleb Farley. But if something were to happen, a medical flag or something off the field to Farley and Surtain, then the offensive player, again Pitts, has to be in serious consideration for the 10th pick. My point today isn't to make a case for either of them, but more so tell the cautionary tale of what happens when you value need over the best player available, with the Cowboys involved in some way. But before I get started with that, if you happen to like this video, make sure to hit the like and sub button to stay connected. Let's get to it. I should probably acknowledge, I understand both sides of the argument, and why it would make sense to put your best draft capital towards fixing a glaring flaw. However, for the sake of the argument, I'm going to take the unpopular side and make the case for best player available, regardless of offense or defense. The main point I want to address is that you have to take a defender in the first round to fix your defense right away. Bluntly stated, it's false, and there's no evidence to back that up. For reference, here's a graphic from 2010 to 2019, showing the last ranked defense in terms of points, who they took in the first round the next year, and where they ranked that season. And by the way it looks, there's no proof that it makes a difference either way. Prime examples here would be Sheldon Rankins, taken 12th overall, but the Saints remaining a poor defense, or Miami taking Tua Tagovailoa and going from 32 points per game to 4th. And probably the most convincing that it makes no difference, Houston, 32 points per game all the way to 5th, without any draft picks in their first 2 rounds. And if you need any extra motivation, I'll bring it back to home. The only Dallas defense as bad as last year might have been 2013. That was getting killed every week, blowing big leads, and gave it 300 yards to Calvin Johnson. That same group went from 27th in points per game to 15th the next season after taking Zach Martin in the first round. And for added context, was after they cut DeMarcus Ware, 2013 sack leader Jason Hatcher, again proving it makes no difference if you go offense or defense in the first round. Like I said before, I think it's better to see actual examples of the biggest hits and misses of taking need over the best player available, starting with the most famous one in Dallas, Jerry Jones passing on Randy Moss. I'm sure this opens up old wounds for Cowboy fans, and I hope that it does. If you're still dead set, the first pick has to be on defense. Passing on Moss wasn't so much about need, as it was based on character concerns. Still, over 20 years later, we can see where taking a player of his caliber would have gotten Dallas through a tough time. The retirement of Michael Irvin, the retirement of Troy Aikman, and the departure of Emmitt Smith, and then the hole at quarterback until Tony Romo came along, leaving us all to imagine what could have been if maybe Moss had teamed up with Romo and perhaps Terrell Owens. The rough spot they were in to start the 2000s would have been a much softer blow if they trusted the evaluation and taken the better player, instead of opting for a lesser talent and passing on a Hall of Fame player who many believe is better than Michael Irvin, with Moss reminding them of their mistake every time he played the Cowboys. This last one's a bit more intricate, and only indirectly involves the Cowboys, but I think it had to be mentioned, just because how crazy it is, and how one team likely ends up with 3 Hall of Famers and probably a championship, but throws it away by simply reaching for need and not taking the best player in the top 10. Not to digress, but I'll be doing more scenarios like this in the future, in a new series called The Cowboys Butterfly Effect, covering the biggest what-ifs in Cowboys history. So if that interests you, make sure to hit that sub button. Getting back to it, the team I want to refer to in this case is the Arizona Cardinals. For those that remember, this one played as Antonio Holmes left Arizona on the wrong side of history, and haven't come that close to a title since. However, all that could be totally different if they avoided one simple mistake on draft day 2 years earlier. Here's where Dallas comes in the picture. On March 4, 2007, Dallas was signed Leonard Davis from the Cardinals. Davis was taken with the second pick in the 2001 draft, but by 2006, was no longer in their future plans. So in the 2007 draft, Arizona, looking to fill a need, would take Davis's replacement in Levi Brown with the 5th pick. Needless to say, Brown could never live up to the hype, and a short 6 years later was no longer a Cardinal, and by many considered to be a bust. The Hall of Famer Arizona passed on was Adrian Peterson, taken just 2 spots later to Minnesota. More on them in a second. Arizona passed on a chance to feature a lineup that looked like this: a comeback Kurt Warner on his way to the Hall of Fame, Pro Bowl Anquan Boldin, future Hall of Famer Larry Fitzgerald, and of course, Adrian Peterson. It's only my opinion, but I have little doubt that with Peterson, the Cardinals lose to Pittsburgh, and Arizona is tempted to pass the ball on this historic play by James Harrison. I'd also argue, simply taking Peterson over Brown would have extended the career of their soon-to-be Hall of Fame quarterback, which, if you think about it, is a perfect segue to explain how the choice impacted the Vikings. Going into the 2007 draft, nobody believed Peterson would fall that far to Minnesota at 7. Many believed the Vikings had a major need at quarterback, with some suggesting they take quarterback Brady Quinn at 7. They ignored the popular take and took Peterson anyway. Make no mistake about it, Peterson in no way was a need for the Vikings. Just a year earlier, the Vikings signed Chester Taylor from Baltimore to a 4-year contract, and Taylor was coming off a 1,200-yard season before the Vikings decided to draft Peterson. Again, taking the best player available. Unlike Arizona, the Vikings had a vision for what Peterson could be in their offense, running behind star offensive linemen Brian McKinney, Matt Burke, and Steve Hutchinson. 2 years later, Peterson and a rebuilt Brett Favre, much like Kurt Warner, would run all over Dallas in a playoff blowout, coming 1 game short of a Super Bowl and more than likely a championship. I'd like to say Arizona got the last laugh in actually making it to the big game the year prior, but seemingly owned their mistake on passing on a running back by drafting draft bust Beanie Wells 2 months later after losing to Pittsburgh. And as they say, the rest is history. Long story short, as it pertains to Dallas, I'm not saying they have to go out of their own way to address the offense in spite of the defense, or vice versa. What I am saying is that they owe it to themselves to take the best player on their board, if by not doing so, we'll be settling for less. One last example of such is taking CeeDee Lamb over suspected pick K'Lavon Chaisson. Bottom line, whether it's Kyle Pitts, Rashawn Slater, or say a much higher prospect on their board, it really doesn't matter, so long as you understand not to ignore diamonds staring you in the face and realize there's hidden gems all over the landscape. Finally, thank all you guys for watching. As always, Cowboys up. Peace.